The streets of the city were merciless. The afternoon sun beat down on cracked sidewalks, reflecting off grimy windows and puddles of stagnant water. The air smelled of smoke, wet asphalt, and the faint, sour tang of refuse that the city never seemed to fully sweep away. Among the throngs of people hurrying past, a young woman sat alone on the cold, uneven pavement. Her clothes hung in tatters, the fabric thin and worn through at the elbows and knees. A threadbare shawl wrapped loosely around her shoulders offered little protection from the chill that crept beneath her skin. Her hands shook, not from the cold, but from hunger. The hollow ache in her stomach had grown unbearable over the last 2 days. She had searched every alley, begged at every doorstep, and yet her stomach remained empty, gnawing at her like a persistent animal that refused to be ignored. Her eyes, dark and haunted, scanned the street with a mix of desperation and resolve. She could feel the weight of the tiny box she held pressed against her chest. Inside lay the only treasure she had ever known, a delicate gold locket, worn smooth from years of handling, engraved with the name of the woman who had loved her first, her mother. Every instinct screamed at her to keep it, to protect the last fragment of her family and memories. But the growl in her belly drowned out all other thoughts. Hunger was a tyrant that brooked no hesitation. She had no coins, no family, no safety net, only this locket and the small hope that maybe, just maybe, someone would see the value of what she carried, if only in food. She rose slowly, clutching the box against her chest as if it were a fragile bird. Her legs ached from standing, her back screamed from the hard pavement, but she forced herself forward, weaving between the bustling crowd. Vendors called out their wares, honking carts rumbled down the streets, and the city's symphony of noise pressed against her ears, but she walked with single-minded determination. Every step brought her closer to the small food stall at the edge of the square, and with it, the impossible choice she would have to make. The small food stall sat at the corner of a bustling square, its paint peeling and signs swinging gently in the breeze. The aroma of frying bread and simmering broth hung in the air, tempting her stomach and teasing her senses. She approached cautiously, her worn shoes scuffing against the uneven stones, and stopped a few feet from the counter. Her hands trembled as she clutched the tiny box against her chest. The vendor, a stout man with a face lined from years of sun and labor, glanced up from the sizzling pans. "What do you want?" he barked, wiping his hands on a greasy apron. His eyes flicked over her ragged clothes, the hollowed cheeks, the dirt smudged across her face. I'd like something to eat," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. It was the kind of voice that risked being drowned out by the noise of the city, but it carried the weight of her desperation. The man narrowed his eyes. "Money first," he said gruffly. The words hit her like a wall. She opened the box with shaking fingers, revealing the delicate gold locket inside. Its surface glimmered in the sunlight, tiny engravings catching the eye. She placed it carefully on the counter. "It's all I have," she said, her voice breaking. "Please, just enough to eat." The vendor leaned forward, his eyes widening as they rested on the locket. He reached out hesitantly, turning it over in his rough hands. "Gold," he muttered under his breath, almost to himself. "Real gold." He looked at her, confusion and suspicion flickering in his gaze. "You're giving this away, for food?" She nodded, lowering her eyes, cheeks burning with shame. "I haven't eaten in 2 days," she admitted. "I have nothing else." A long silence stretched between them. The sizzling of oil in the pans and the distant chatter of the street became background noise to the intensity of the moment. Finally, the man sighed, his shoulders relaxing slightly. He grabbed a small loaf of bread and a cup of steaming soup, sliding them across the counter. "Eat quickly," he muttered, as if afraid the world might snatch the food away before she could. She took the meal with trembling hands, the smell of the warm bread making her stomach growl anew. Every bite was a mixture of relief and lingering shame, each swallow a reminder of how far she had fallen, and how much courage it had taken to place her treasure on that counter. For the first time in days, warmth spread through her body, not just from the food, but from the fleeting sense that someone had recognized her desperation. The crowd bustled around the small food stall, oblivious to the tiny drama unfolding on the corner. People laughed, shouted, and bargained for their meals, the city humming with life, indifferent to the struggles of the girl on the pavement. She hunched over her modest meal, each bite a small victory, though her eyes remained downcast, scanning the worn bread and soup as if even this modest bounty could vanish if she blinked. A shadow fell across the stall, and she looked up to see a man standing there, tall, impeccably dressed, with an air of quiet authority. His tailored suit shimmered subtly in the sunlight, his polished shoes catching the glint of the nearby puddles. Unlike the hurried passers-by, he did not rush. He moved deliberately, each step precise, almost like a predator in control of his environment. His gaze fell on her, not with judgment, but with curiosity, a curiosity that made her heart skip. "You gave that away, for food." His voice was calm, measured, yet it carried an unspoken weight, a presence that seemed to still the chaos around them. She froze, unsure how to answer. I had no choice," she said softly, her voice trembling. She hugged the tiny box to her chest, ashamed that her last piece of family history had been exchanged for mere survival. The man crouched slightly to study the locket, his fingers hovering above it but not touching. His eyes traced the delicate engravings, the meticulous craftsmanship, the faint scratches that told stories of decades past. "This isn't just gold," he said, almost to himself. "This is centuries-old work. Rare, valuable, extraordinary." He straightened, looking at her with a mixture of awe and something deeper, a recognition of courage, of character. "You could have hidden it, sold it in secret, or kept it as a gamble for the future," he continued, his tone softening. "But you gave it for survival. That honesty, that courage, it's rare. Very rare." He reached into his coat and withdrew a card, sliding it across the counter. "I want to buy this from you, not to take it away, but to preserve it. And more importantly, I want to help you. You shouldn't have to choose between food and life again." Her eyes widened, disbelief warring with hope. Tears prickled at the corners, blurring the locket's glint in her vision. For the first time in days, she felt seen, not for what she had lost, but for who she was. Every pang of hunger, every sleepless night, every desperate decision had led to this moment. And in that instant, she realized that sometimes, the world could reward courage with more than gold. The warmth of the food lingered in her stomach, but it was the words of the man in the tailored suit that settled deep in her heart. She clutched the locket, now no longer a symbol of desperation, but of something far greater. Her courage, her honesty, and the recognition that even the smallest, seemingly powerless act could ripple outward in ways she had never imagined. The billionaire stood beside her, calm and patient, as though he had all the time in the world. He smiled, a gentle acknowledgement of the struggles she had endured and the strength she had shown. "You won't have to worry anymore," he said. "I can offer you a safe place, work, education, anything you need to rebuild your life." Her voice caught in her throat. I don't know what to say." "Why me?" He shook his head slightly, still smiling. "Because the world needs people like you. People who act with honesty, even when survival is at stake. That's priceless. The locket brought you here, yes, but your heart is what matters." Tears streamed down her cheeks, warm and cleansing. She had walked these streets alone, hungry, desperate, believing that her life was defined by scarcity and loss. Now, in the shadow of the towering city buildings, she felt a flicker of hope she had long thought impossible. The towering glass walls no longer felt intimidating. They felt like a bridge to a future she could finally imagine. The billionaire extended his hand. "Come with me. Let's start anew." She hesitated for a moment, glancing down at the little locket, the last connection to her mother. Then, slowly, she placed it in his hand, trusting him not just with the gold, but with the memory it carried. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling but steady. "For everything." As they walked away from the bustling square, she realized that she was no longer the same girl who had sat alone on the pavement, starving and hopeless. Each step forward was lighter than the last, filled with the quiet strength of someone who had survived and had been seen. The city, once a cold and unforgiving maze, now seemed full of possibilities. And somewhere deep inside her, a small, stubborn flame of hope ignited, one that no hunger, no struggle, and no hardship could ever extinguish.